another tutorial video. Today's one is showing you how to do some batch making of your cards using paper piecing or inlay die cutting, as it's sometimes referred to as well. And it's part of Tonic's Make It Monday as well. So in this video I'm going to be showing you how to take minimal supplies and also some of your older stash that you might have as well and turn it into 8 batch made cards from like minimal amount of die cutting, but maximising all of those waste pieces and thinking a little bit outside the box to chop up some of those panels to turn it into even more cards as well. So I have taken 3 sheets of white cardstock and 3 sheets of coloured cardstock. So I've got Marigold yellow, I've got grass green, and then I've got ocean blue from the Craft Perfect range, and 3 sheets of 300 GSM white card. And you're also going to want your card blanks as well. I haven't included that in those 3 sheets. This is all just what I've been die cutting from. Then I've also brought out a selection of glitters. These can be any glitters, obviously, whatever colour scheme you're going for these cards. You can choose whatever glitters you want. I just went for a white glitter, a yellow glitter, a turquoise glitter and a green glitter to go with all of the colours of cardstock I've used. If you want to know the exact colours, the green is Garden Grove, the blue is turquoise, the yellow is English Daisy, and the white one is the Ice White glitter, and they're all the Nuvo Pure Sheen ones. Some of them aren't available anymore, some of them you can still get on the Tonic website, specifically the green and the yellow, but the turquoise and the white you might still have in your stash. Then I've also just taken one patterned panel. So this is a fairly old patterned panel, but Tonic have done tons of different patterned panels over the years. There have been like skinny versions, there's been square versions, there's been 5x7 versions, there's been like edges and borders and things that would also work for this as well. So I went for this one. I'm not 100% sure of the name. I'll try and find it and put it on the screen here, but it's a really old one that's been out for probably going on 5 years now. But this can definitely be transferred to any patterned panel kind of die that you have. But I specifically use this one. But I've also just went through my stash and selected a few others. This one also came out with this one and this gorgeous one. I love that one. And also this one, that was the release that one came out in. But also things like this beautiful split strip die. There was 3 or 4 different designs of these. It would work really nicely with these kind of ones as well. There was these beautiful 5x7 patterned panels. I think maybe there was like 6 of these. I think they're 5x7, a rough 5x7 kind of size. I think there was like 6 of them. These would be a lot more fiddly to do your paper piecing. However, I do a trick with my paper piecing. I put double-sided adhesive sheets or the roll down, and then I place back in the larger areas, and when I get fed up with placing pieces back in, I use glitter to fill in the rest of the areas. So even fiddly ones like this, you could just paper piece in those larger areas and then put glitter in the rest of it as well. I was also thinking some of the dies like these ones. These were the floral fold dies that again, well, this was maybe like a year or so ago, I'd say. But these are absolutely stunning and would work perfectly for these kind of cards too. And then more recently, we had a couple of different pattern panels that came out with the Mother's Day collection with the little handbags. And I think this one in particular would work brilliantly for this technique as well. But I wanted to show the cards with an older die. So those of you who've been collecting your Tonic dies for ages, have a look through and see which pattern panels you've got in your stash as well. And then to finish off the cards, I just picked out some really simple sentiments, and ironically the names of these are Simply Sentiments. So we've got the Simply Sentiments die set and Simply Sentiments stamp set, which both came out together, and you can still get both of these on the Tonic website at the time I'm filming this video. And I did also bring in a couple of dies from the Celebration Shadow Frame Insert die set. So there was a couple of different shadow frame die sets that had the main frame with some different panels and words in it, and then there was also 3 different add-on sets, and I just decided to go with this one so that I had a happy birthday sentiment. So this one's got happy birthday and on your day, because this one didn't particularly have a happy birthday sentiment in, so I thought I'd bring that one in to show you that sentiment, and also how you can add a topper to some of these backgrounds as well. It doesn't just have to be just adding a word on top of a pretty background. And I also did incorporate the Little Monsters stamp club as well for one of the little monsters on one of the cards too. So those are all of the products that I have used to create these cards, and then we've turned all of those bits and pieces. These don't have to be full sheets either. These could be scraps from your scrap box as well, and you can easily make these cards with scraps too. It doesn't just have to be full sheets, but I wanted to keep track of how much cardstock I had used to be able to tell you. And so from all of that, doing some paper piecing that you'll see later on in the video, we have got 8 beautiful cards ready to have in our stash for all of those occasions where we might need them. So really simple batch making of cards, but utilising that beautiful paper piecing technique and keeping all of those extra pieces, and not just discarding the ones we don't want for a specific card, but using those to create even more backgrounds that we can cut up into pieces and use to make a whole selection of cards with all sorts of different sentiments. So you've already seen how all of these cards turned out, but to start off with, when I was creating these cards, I took my sheets of cardstock and I cut myself 7 squares of cardstock that were 13.5 centimetres square, but you can definitely just use whatever die comes with the patterned panel because all of them have an outside edge to them as well. However, I just thought I would go with a specific size of square. So I cut myself 1 from yellow, 1 from green, 1 from turquoisey blue, and then 4 from white. I did initially only cut 3, but I decided to put an extra one on this card. So you want 4 from white if you are going to recreate all of the cards that I've created. And then basically you want to have die cut all of them and save all of the pieces. So I actually had 2 pots on the go. I had one with all the white pieces in and one with all the coloured pieces in, because we're mostly going to be putting in the largest pieces back in. So it doesn't particularly matter that we're mixing them up. It's quite easy to find them in here. If you were worried, you could keep them in separate boxes, a yellow one, a green one, a turquoise one, a white one, if you'd rather. But I tended to go for a mixed colour one and a white one to help me get all of those pieces and save them all. Then you want to take all of your actual die cuts that you've got and either take the Craft Perfect double-sided adhesive sheets and put them behind the panels, or use the wide roll of double-sided adhesive that Craft Perfect now do as well, because with paper piecing there is that point that you get fed up with putting all the pieces back in and you really wish that you didn't have to place all of those last bits back in. So if you've already got adhesive behind the main sort of like frame or patterned panel, you can just fill in the rest of those areas with the glitter. And it also means you don't have to add adhesive to the back of every single little piece as you're putting it in as well. So it is a real time saver. I know sometimes those adhesive sheets can be like you feel like you're spending a lot of money on them, but they really are worth it for these kind of techniques. And if we were doing the 6 panels that we did here, that would require 3 A4 sheets. So I think you get 5 in a pack, so 3 out of a whole packet. It's not too much to use, and you would have all of those excess scrap pieces from around the edge to use on different things as well. But that's what I used to create these. So I will roll the footage of me showing you sped up how I did all of the paper piecing for these cards. you've just seen that sort of sped up portion showing you how you can pick and choose the different pieces from the different patterned panels. I have just noticed a mistake in this one. I couldn't find that last blue piece, but we can always put the sentiment over the top of that to hide it. I just noticed that as I was talking. But yeah, now you've seen that sped up footage, we've now got our 6 panels that we have paper pieced, and I would say, from my perspective, making a card, it would be probably either this one or this one. That would have been my goal when I was making these cards, but because we did because we cut 3 of the white outlines and then we cut 1 of each of the outlines from the 3 different colours, we've ended up with 6 different backgrounds that we can now use to create our batch of cards. And you don't just have to use them in the way that we've created them. So we have created these in a 13.5 centimetre square piece of card, so that would be perfect for our square cards that we make. But you don't have to just use them on your square cards. And I also wanted to show you some other ways of altering the glitter that you've used on here as well. Because we have used the double-sided adhesive sheets on the back of this, you can see, actually, you can see through it and you can see the translucency of the backing sheet. So if you take this backing sheet off and stick this to a different colour of card, you can affect the colour of glitter. So for this one, I am just going to stick it straight onto a white card blank. So this will stay this beautiful crystal white kind of colour. But for these two, I have stuck them onto a coloured card. So this was the yellow glitter, which was from the Spring Meadow colour trend. It's called English Daisy. It's a very light colour. You will have seen it in the sped up footage, how light of a yellow this looked. But because I wanted all the cards to kind of match together, I wanted to deepen up this yellow colour. So all you have to do is take that backing sheet off the back of the double-sided adhesive and then stick it onto a piece of yellow card or whatever colour card you want, that would kind of deepen up that colour. And you can definitely do the same thing with that crystal glitter. If you only have crystal glitter, but you wanted a green, a yellow or a blue glitter to work with any of these, you can take the backing off and stick it onto that colour of cardstock as well. So this was the crystal coloured glitter, which looks gorgeous and white on this one because we haven't put anything on the back of it, but on this one I stuck it onto that gorgeous ocean blue cardstock. So you've got a variation of that colour with the glitter on top for this card or for this background. So you really can alter them even after you've added the glitter to them as well. Then we've also got this background which is finished. I'm not sure if I filmed the part of this where I didn't quite like the way it had turned out, and some of the glitter that I'd used, the dark turquoise glitter, had kind of sunken itself into these sort of areas around where I'd put the white back into the background. So I had a lot of the white ones left over because I had cut 3 full white backgrounds. So what I did was I stacked them. So there's actually 2 to 3, depending how many I had left, stacked in these portions because they're actually all the same. They go all over the background and there's 16 of them in this particular panel. So I've stacked them up and then I've put one of the white die cuts back over the top. So I actually ended up die cutting a 4th white die cut to go on top of this one because there's technically one below as well that we were sticking all the pieces into, and then I've put another one on top of it and it's raised up. And I did the raising up of it by adding foam tape around the perimeter and then also little bits of foam tape in a few areas. But because we had stacked up these extra white pieces here, that's what's supporting a lot of the areas of this as well. So you don't have to go crazy with tiny little bits of foam tape. You can get away with this kind of look by having those stacked up elements there. So that's just another way of doing that as well. But as I was saying earlier, as well as like altering the glitter, you can alter the shape of these. So even though this is a square pattern panel, I mean, you definitely could have done this with all of the other pattern panels and ideas that I showed you at the beginning of the video, but because this one is square, it doesn't mean that you have to make a square card with it. You could trim it off so the pattern would be off center and you make a normal small A6 kind of size card, or you can be a little bit more inventive and go for an A6 size sort of card, but cut your panel at a diagonal. And then we could do a card like this with the portion in a portrait fashion, or we could take the other portion of this and we could do it in a landscape fashion. If you want to hide this cut edge, we can add a strip of cardstock across here. We can add die cut sentiments, we could add a stamp sentiment, whatever, to kind of finish off these cards, and they still look beautiful, but we've now got 2 cards from that one panel. And then you can also cut it up into halves or quarters. So originally I cut this into halves and I was going to use it on 2 cards as halves. And the idea for this one is we're going to stick it in the centre, and then we're going to use strips of card to cover up that cut edge and sort of disguise this edge as well, just to make it look like it's a singular sort of panel. And we're going to put pieces on either side to sort of change this card up a bit. And then to change it up even further, you can cut that in half again, and then you can do 2 corners on a card as well, and we're going to add some strips of cardstock going across there and a die cut sentiment too. So there are so many different ways of changing up these patterned panels, as well as just doing the typical square card with the gorgeous patterned panel that we've been able to get so many different variations out of. But from those initial 6 die cuts, that possibly if you were just making the one card, if you were going for a card like this, you probably would have just had the 4 die cuts. But having those extra white ones enables you to create, how many have we got? 8 cards, just from basically the kind of supplies that you would have been using just to create the one card, utilising all of those extra fall away pieces from all of the different colours and all of the outsides of those coloured pieces as well. We've now created enough pieces to make 8 cards. So I'll be back in 1 second to show you all the bits and pieces that I have prepared and die cut everything ready to actually finish off these cards. So I've trimmed those panels down that I had added onto some coloured card, and I've got card blanks for all of the respective cards as well. So we're going to have 4 A6 kind of size and 4 square cards, and then I've got all of the pieces here that I have decided would work nicely for these cards. So I thought I'd just run through and show you how I'm thinking of laying these out, and then I will go off camera, stick them all together, and then I'll come back and show you those finished results as well. There are different layouts for these too. The way we've cut this at a diagonal, we could put it whichever direction we want. I feel like for a portrait card it might look nice to be in that bottom kind of corner, and I was thinking for this card I was going to go with enjoy as the sentiment, and you will have seen all of the dies that I chose earlier on in the video and the stamps and everything to go with these. Actually, my original idea was to do this one landscape, and I was going to put the enjoy running across there. So you really can change these up into whatever orientation you want. I do actually prefer it landscape. So I'm going to go landscape for that one. Literally just a strip of card to cover that raw edge that we cut, and then a simple layered up sentiment. It's just a couple of green ones stuck together onto a white bubble, and literally that is going to be it to finish off that card. We're just sticking that piece straight to the card blank as well, so no extra card layer, so it makes it quite cost effective batch making of cards as well. So that will be the first one. Then for this next one, again I had planned to do this one landscape, but we can always change it to be a portrait card if we'd rather. And for this one, instead of using a green strip like I did on the other half of this panel, I decided to bring in the teal colour that's repeated across some of the other panels. There aren't actually any of the teal pieces in this one, but I thought it would work nicely. And all I've done for this one is stamped a thinking of you sentiment and matted it onto another piece of that teal cardstock. And I was thinking of putting it about there on the card to finish that one off. So we have ended up with 2 that look very similar. So if you are doing a lot of these and you love the layout of the card that you really want to create, you can, from all of those square panels, cut them in half diagonally at the same point and create all the same layout of card as well, just with a slightly different backing piece for them. So it could be good for invitations or maybe Christmas cards or something that you want to be the same for sending out to people as well. So we've got those 2 options using that diagonally cut one. Then for this one that we've got those 2 quarter pieces coming in at different angles, I was going to add multiple strips of cardstock. So I was thinking of going with a couple of yellow ones, perhaps a wider one, a little green narrow one, and then a yellow narrow one as well, and bringing them across the card, probably a bit closer together, more like that, to sort of bring the yellow and the green pieces from those panels in together. And then for the actual sentiment on this card, I was going to go with hello, and I've just done it with a white bubble and a couple of yellow ones stacked up there. And all of these pieces that I have die cut here are all from those original 3 sheets of the coloured cardstock. So they're very cost effective kind of cards, not breaking into too many sheets of cardstock, although you could definitely rifle through your scraps and pick out enough pieces to create these cards as well. It doesn't have to just be fresh sheets of cardstock. But that was the layout for this card that I'm thinking of doing. Again, sticking it straight onto the card blank, so we're saving some cardstock by not having that extra panel underneath it. Then this card is the one where we kind of want to disguise that you know, this is half a panel rather than a whole panel design. So for one side of this card, it's really easy to disguise it, same way as we had with those diagonal ones, and we can even draw the eye out by putting a couple of strips along here and bringing out another colour. On this side, I am going to do the same thing, but I'm going to trim off that edge of the panel first so that I can definitely hide that it's the edge of a panel, and it'll look more intentional and more like it's an actual panel piece rather than half of a full panel piece. But for this one, I have cut some of these little balloons from the die set that I showed you at the beginning of the video, and I thought we could have a few yellow balloons floating up on this one. And then I've also coloured in one of the little monsters from one of the stamp clubs from quite a few months back now, but he is just so adorable. I have any extras when I'm stamping out things for stamp clubs I keep in a pot on my desk, so it's perfect for creating cards like this. I wanted to show how, even though all these backgrounds are technically the same, just with different colours and positions of where we've put colours or different amounts of glitter and stuff on them, you can easily turn them into more of a child's card, or make them look more masculine or more feminine, or even go for different colours and make them look more appropriate for different seasons of the year as well. So there's so many different ways that you can change these, but I wanted to show that even though this background you may think is maybe more of like a traditional kind of pattern probably, you can still put a fun character on there and turn it into a children's card as well. And then I was just going to add the sentiment, "You're the best," maybe towards the top there, and you've got little balloons there. This could be a birthday card, but I kind of feel like it's a small little cake, as if, you know, he's kind of giving a small little token to his friend to say "you're the best." So I thought that was a nice kind of layout for that card. And then the 4 square designs. For this one, I was thinking of doing a ripped piece of vellum going across the centre to help my little sentiment stand out. So this one says "sorry," and it's the green onto a white bubble, but just one green sentiment rather than stacking it. And I thought a little piece of ripped vellum across the centre really helps that stand out just a little bit more. It gets slightly lost in there just by itself, so that little piece of ripped vellum really helps it pop out. And sorry can be "sorry I was grumpy," "sorry I did something you didn't like," "sorry we fell out," or it can be a sympathy card as well. So that set of dies, the Simply Sentiment dies, even though some of the sentiments can go or might need to have some extra stamps to go with them, sorry can be all sorts of different occasions as well. So even without having the other words with it too. So I thought it's always nice to show a sympathy card or a, you know, a sorry kind of card as well. Then this one, which is the one where I raised up that 4th white die cut on top of this one, it's a really different look. I don't tend to do this kind of a look when I'm doing paper piecing or inlaid die cutting, but it just gives it a completely different look with some of that dimension and shadow in there. But to finish off this card, I was just going to go really, really simple, and I've just taken the thanks sentiment, but this time instead of doing a white bubble, I went for a yellow bubble, because there's yellow on the 4 corners of the card but nothing in that central section. And then I was just doing the shadowed sentiment, so I did a white sentiment with the blue shadow behind it to go in the centre of that one. Then the one that has got the green outline to it, so it's quite a bold, striking kind of background, I thought I'd show you how to again adapt the kind of style of these cards to bring in possibly like a different age category. So maybe this is a younger child, and bringing in this die set could turn it into more of like a teenager card maybe. But you could definitely put this panel on any of the other cards as well. As I was die cutting it, I was going for it to go on this card. However, it does kind of get a little bit lost in there, but I was thinking of sticking this on with foam pads so that it sort of diffuses the background even more. So I've cut this background from the thicker vellum that Tonic do, but to diffuse it even more, we could add this with some 3D foam on there as well. And then in that die set, you've also got the little sentiment too. So if you have any of those shadow box die sets, whether you bought the actual shadow box or whether you bought one or two of the add-on sets with these gorgeous arch-shaped layering kind of designs with the sentiments in there, there are so many different sentiments in those sets. So if you loved this idea of doing the batch making with the paper piecing, but you only make square cards, so you wanted to keep them all square, and you like the layout of having this archway piece with the straight sentiment across, if you had those die sets, there are tons of possibilities for different cards with all of those as well. But I thought for this one, I was going to go with that kind of a layout. We could play around with it, put that in the centre, have it underneath. That might be a nicer layout. You might feel like that is a little bit too busy having just the vellum behind it. You could mount it onto white as well and have that on there if you would rather too. I was just going for showing you a different kind of die set that you could use in conjunction with some of these backgrounds, so I went for that. And then the final card, again, another really simple one. I was just going to put a little congrats sentiment on there. And again, because we had these sort of four corner areas with that ocean blue colour of card, I thought I'll do the bubble in the ocean blue and then the sentiment in the white, and that really helps it stand out as well. So depending what colours you cut your sentiments from, you might feel like a ripped piece of vellum would look really good behind it. You might feel like it pops out perfectly without any vellum on it as well. There's different ways of kind of adding your sentiments to these, and there's nothing to stop you having all of these backgrounds ready and having a bunch of sentiments cut out ready, and then if you are in a rush, you can literally just go to this box that's got all of these pieces in, pick out a card, pick the perfect sentiment and stick it on, and then you've instantly got a card there as well ready, rather than have already deciding what each card is going to be. You can definitely have prepared sentiments and things as well, or you could make them all the same sentiment if that's the kind of card that you're always needing. Like you could make them all congratulations cards, you can make them all thank you cards, birthday cards, whatever occasion you always need cards for. So I'll be back in 1 second for you, probably like an hour for me, sticking all of these bits and pieces down, and I'll come back and show you all the finished cards. Okay, so like half an hour later, some foam tape and some Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and we've got 8 finished cards with all different sentiments on that are perfect and ready to have in your stash to give out on a moment's notice whenever you need those quick cards. It's really lovely to have a batch of them already in your stash ready to go, that especially ones that you haven't had to spend too much time on but still look really impressive, because with the paper piecing it is quite a lengthy process. I'd probably say those 6 panels that I did in the sped up portion of this video is maybe like 1.5 to 2 hours, but it's quite relaxing just doing that whilst watching the telly. So the time kind of just flies by, and then you've got those beautiful panels to use on your cards as well. And actually I forgot to mention earlier, when I added the glitter on this particular panel here, I put turquoise glitter in the centre and then put the green glitter around the edge. So you just put a little dollop of turquoise glitter, smudge it around with your finger, and then you tip off the excess of that, and then you can smudge around some green to fill in the rest of the areas as well. That is the first card. Really, really simple, just a little enjoy card, which can be for lots of different occasions. This almost exact same card with the other half of that panel, but thinking for you, instead of using a die cut sentiment, we've used a stamped sentiment, put it in a different position, and it does give the card a different look as well. So we've got those 2 cards. Then we've got these 2 cards that are made from the same panel, and look how completely different we've made those cards look just by cutting that half of the panel into quarters and using a die cut sentiment, and then using this one as more of like a strip panel with the little monster on there as well. Really turns it into more of a kid's card or a young person's card. And you've got You're the Best and Hello, so 2 more great cards to have on hand to give out to people. Then we've also got Sorry, and when I was laying this out, I had forgotten about that blue piece that was missing over here when I was telling you earlier, so I'd sort of laid it out in the middle, but just to cover that one piece that was missing, I obviously couldn't find that die cut when I was filling all of the pieces in. It was just one of these turquoise pieces here. That area got filled with glitter, and I did actually notice it when I was talking earlier on in the video. So just to cover that up, I just moved where I wanted my sentiment to be. I often put things in that like lower third of the card or upper third of the card, depending on how the layout's working out and stuff. So it does really work nicely as well. If you don't like the symmetricalness, you've got that little bit of asymmetry in there as well. So that's a sorry card. Then we've got this three-dimensional kind of card with those stacked up extra die cuts. That is a gorgeous little thanks card. Then we've got this beautiful congrats card. This is probably, I would say these two are probably the card that I would have been intending to make with the paper piecing. But we got all of those other cards as extra, which is really lovely. So we've got that congrats card, and then we've also got the happy birthday card as well. And I did end up going for the central kind of layout for this rather than putting the sentiment up here. I ended up putting it underneath, and I also put a second layer of vellum behind this to diffuse the background a little bit more as well. I felt like the white was too harsh, but the one layer of vellum wasn't disguising or blurring out the background enough, and it was too busy behind it. But now with the two layers of the vintage white vellum, which is the thicker stuff, you're really like blurring out that background behind it as well. So those are all of the cards, and then I thought actually I would show you all of the leftovers. So these are the minimal amounts. I mean, most of these pieces are from that final extra one, white die cut that I cut to do this card, but these are the minimal amounts that are left from all of those die cuts that we started with. We've got very minimal amounts of the coloured ones, so we literally probably could not get more cards out of all of these pieces than we have actually managed to get. So it's a really cost effective and time saving way of creating your cards. Usually I personally would probably spend anywhere between an hour to 2 hours on one card, depending on how much colouring or die cutting or bits and pieces that are involved. When I used to do my sped up videos, I'd usually have an hour and a half to 2 hours worth of footage to speed up to turn into the video. But all of these in total, I would say it's probably been about 4 hours in total, doing all of the paper piecing, the die cutting, cutting out all of the extra pieces, deciding what the extra pieces were going to be, colouring in this little image and stuff. And that is creating 8 cards. So 8 cards in 4 hours means only half an hour per card. And then you've got all these beautiful cards in your stash ready to send out as well. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial video. A little bit different of a tutorial perhaps, but I really hope you enjoyed it, and it's part of the Tonic Make It Monday as well. So do check out Tonic's website, and there should have been an email going out as well all about the Make It Monday as well. So they're doing all sorts of different things every Monday, and for this one they asked me to do batch making cards. So I thought using a patterned panel and doing some paper piecing is the perfect way to do the batch making, because you already have those die cuts left over from all of the coloured pieces, so you might as well turn them into more cards. And I thought it's nice to show you those different ways of doing it as well. So really hope you enjoyed this tutorial video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!